Welcome to Zambia today. I am Alice Banda to be with you, and in the studio we are joined by Mrs. Chiboni Evans, the Chief Executive Officer of the South African Electrotechnical Export Council. You're welcome to Zani studio.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you for having me.
We are honored to have you. We are so happy. I know you are a very busy person, but you made time to come here. We are so grateful.
It's only my pleasure.
Briefly, tell us about yourself. Who is Chiboni Evans?
Okay, so I think my name tells a bit of a story. So Evans is obviously Mr. Evans who made me Mrs. Evans, British, but I'm not British. I am half South African and half Zambian. So the Chiboni is actually a Zambian name, it's a Bemba name. And so I was born in Zambia. I'm what they call a product of exile. My mother was exiled in Zambia during the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, when they still had the apartheid system in South Africa. And of course, Zambia was kind enough to host a lot of refugees. So my mom found herself here in exile and met my dad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us about your organization. What is it about?
So the South African Electrotechnical Export Council is a public-private partnership between the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition and the private sector in the electrotechnical space. And electrotechnical, I know, sounds a little bit of a mouthful, but it covers 4 subsectors, which are quite key sectors, especially in what we call industries of the future. So we cover energy and electrical engineering, and that's where our renewable energy comes into play. And then we also cover electronics and the digital economy. We cover technology and telecommunications, and in the electronics space we cover consumer electronics and industrial electronics and also defense electronics. So we've got member companies. So our mandate is to bring together South African companies in those sectors and showcase their competencies into the international and global environment.
Okay. You recently held a conference, successful one, at Mlungushi International Conference Center. Tell us, what was it all about?
So the conference was what we call the Continental Energy and Infrastructure Investment Forum. So it's basically a platform that we created. It's about 5 years old now in terms of its totality, in terms of its genesis. But as Ceiif, we call it Ceiif for short, it's been running for 3 years. And what we do is we bring together policymakers, project owners, financiers from Africa's energy and infrastructure space to one space, so we can then identify projects that need development, projects that need fast tracking, projects that need positioning at a high governmental level and even at continental level. So we were supported this year again by the current African Union Commissioner for Infrastructure and Energy, and we had discussions and identified projects as well that needed to be implemented on the continent. As you know, we've got a serious deficit in terms of infrastructure and energy, and without that as the bedrock of what we're trying to do as countries, as a continent, we won't be able to industrialize. If we can't industrialize, we can't trade with each other. So we believe that what we do in this forum is to create that platform for people to come together and make sure that we can build the infrastructure that we need on the continent. But very importantly is to build the infrastructure by Africans, for Africans, and as far as we possibly can, have it financed by African institutions.
It was held first time in Zambia. Why? Why Zambia?
So the name is Continental, so we've held it for 3 years in South Africa. And obviously you cannot be a continental body if you're going to just host in one country. So Zambia was an obvious choice, not because I was born here or because I have linkages here, but more importantly because of the position that Zambia holds within the region you pride yourselves, and I think it was very cleverly termed as a land-linked as opposed to a landlocked country. So you've got access to 8 countries plus one. In terms of what you're doing in the energy and infrastructure space, it's very important. You'll be hosting a lot of corridors in terms of actual physical roads and rail. But also, I think Zambia is also going to find itself in terms of hosting a lot of, and this is something that we spoke about during Ceiif, a lot of the interconnectors that connect the energy sources. So if energy is generated, for instance, in Tanzania and it's needed in Zambia or Zimbabwe, it will always, Zambia is one of those countries that a lot of the interconnectors will pass through. So it's a pivotal country in terms of how the infrastructure is going to develop for the region. But more importantly, I think it's also some of the key things that the government is doing to stabilize the economy, to do the right things to attract investors. So a lot of people are looking to Zambia to make sure that we can invest in this critical country within this sub-region. It's also very stable politically, economically. You know, Zambia's been through 7 different democracies or presidents with no issues. Your currency is now currently very, very stable. Sadly for us South Africans, before you know, the rand would go a lot further, but now we're almost at a 1-to-1. But that's a good sign. You're sitting at single-digit inflation. So yeah, the country is doing all the right things, and I think it's ripe for investment.
Okay, so did you achieve conference objectives?
Yes, I believe we did. We had, as I say, the AU commissioner here. We were hosted on the second day by the president. He came to officially open the event. So we had support from the highest levels of government, which I think is an indication of the seriousness in which our forum is taken. It is an African developed forum, as I say, for Africans, and we've made a commitment that when we come back next year, we're here for on a 3-year commitment, and when we come back next year, we'll be reporting back on the successes or even some of the challenges we may have had. But I believe just from the discussions, even the post-event discussions that we've had, we're going to come back and report some successes.
Isn't that an advantage? You are going to be coming here for the next 3 years?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's an indication, I think, of as I say, the importance of Zambia, and also because if you want to do, we're not just here. It's not an event. It's actually a platform and a forum. You know, we're involving the AU Commission, we're involving the governments of this country and also South Africa. It's not a once-off. We have to have some continuity. So at least I think a minimum of 3 years is what's going to be required.
Okay. So apart from having the conferences 3 years concurrently, what are the next steps for Zambia?
Okay, so I just wanted to say in terms of the Ceiif program, it's actually a 4-day program. So we had 2 days of conference and 2 days of site visits. So the one site visit, we went to the MFEZ, the multi-facility economic zone, because we had a number of business people from South Africa who are looking at what possibilities they can set up here in terms of investing and setting up operations. So that was very, very useful. We work very much in terms of collaboration. Ours is collaborate, renew, and transition. That's our motto. So the collaboration means that we're not just coming here to sell product. We're coming here to set up and establish and partner with Zambians to see how we can move things forward. So that was one of the site visits. And then the second site visit was with the Kafue Gorge Training Center in Kafue, and that also went very well. So the next steps are, we're going to have a continual engagement. So for instance, from the Kafue Gorge, one of the issues that came out there was to discuss how we skill up a workforce should you require a nuclear capability in terms of nuclear energy generation. You know, South Africa's been doing that for 30 years now. So it's now we need to start training up, because as Africa we're saying we need to accept that we will include nuclear as part of our energy mix. So how do we do that? We need to train again Africans to do that, our own people, so we're not importing resources from overseas because they're expensive. We're sitting with a very youthful population on the continent, so we need to start training up our youth to be able to manage these sorts of assets for us. So that's one of the outcomes that came out of that. We've also had post engagements with some of our companies. So one of our EPCs, Actom, is continuing to have engagements with developers here, and they're looking at what sort of operations they might be able to set up in country. We've through the DBSA, the Development Bank of Southern Africa, which is one of the collaborative partners and sponsors. We're looking at a number of projects that they might be interested in financing. But very importantly as well is that if they cannot finance those projects, is also one of the discussions we had with the Zambia Development Agency, who we've partnered with, is to understand what was it about the projects that made them non-bankable. bankable. So how do we then prepare the projects better? So it's not just about looking for projects that are always bankable, but if they can't go through the line, what do we need to do to make sure that we get better projects packaged so that they are bankable?
Okay, let's pause for a break.
Zambia Today is a program that keeps you informed on various government policies and programs. Join us every Tuesday at 18 hours. Don't miss.
Welcome back. In the studio, we are joined by Mrs. Chiboni Evans, the Chief Executive Officer of the South African Electrotechnical Export Council. To move on with the program, how can an average Zambian business person or any business in Zambia in the energy or infrastructure sector tap into the outcomes of the conference?
Okay, so I think I mentioned to you earlier on that one of the things that we did is that we came with a cohort of companies from South Africa. So we had a big EPC, Actom. They employ over 7,000 people in South Africa. They're large. They've got a footprint in 14 operations on the continent. But we also came through with about 20 SMMEs as well. And the reason for that is to say we want at that SMME level for there to be an understanding of what projects are available and how they can then participate in business opportunities that are presented within those projects. So we spend a lot of time going through the projects and unpacking the business opportunities for small, medium and micro enterprises. And that's where the bulk of the small businesses, the businesses reside, not just in South Africa, but also in Zambia. So when you ask the question, is for them to then engage the Ceiif platform, engage us as conveners, engage the SMMEs that came through, and see how they can then partner with them to start implementing those projects.
And
so there's a lot of business opportunities in there.
And where do they start from? How do they start?
Our website is one of the places, and then as I say, so we came through with SMMEs. We're supported, so we work quite a lot with the provincial agencies, specifically the Tswana Economic Development Agency, the Eastern Cape Development Agency, and so it's through our website, through the maybe South African High Commission, very importantly through the Zambia Development Agency. They'll also get information in terms of how they can participate.
CEO, how have these efforts worked in South Africa, and how can Zambia learn from that?
So as I say, so one of the things I think we pride ourselves is, so as the Electrotechnical Export Council, it's one of 17 export councils, by the way, because we are public-private between public being government and private being the private sector. So we've got about 100 member companies in our core stable of members. But through the government linkage, we have a mandate to develop SMMEs. So how can you replicate that? I think is to be intentional about what you want to do with your small, medium and micro enterprises, and hold people to account. So when you've got institutions such as ours, which are industry associations that are supported by government to promote business and industry development, is to make sure that there's a certain component of that is SMMEs.
Okay, as a woman, you put together a huge conference. What message would you give to a Zambian woman or a young girl who would want to do the things that you do?
Well, okay, so the first thing I would say is I didn't put together the conference. God did.
Okay.
So that's the first thing, yeah. So it's so I think it's to go with when you believe in something, and you've got a calling to do something. I've got a passion for this continent, and I work very closely with other women as well who've got a passion for this continent. So the first thing what I think one needs to do is to, and this is also biblical, is to choose your friends wisely. You look for like-minded people who think the way that you do, and people that will help you. And don't be shy to ask for help. So that's the first thing I would piece of advice I'd give any young lady who wants to move things forward. Accept where you've got your weaknesses, and where you need help, ask for help, and try and learn as much as you can from people who know more than you do. And there'll always be people who know a lot more than you do. And I'd say also read up on your subject matter, and very, very importantly, I would say, is as far as you possibly can, operate with as much humility as you possibly can, and understand that what we're doing, we're not doing for ourselves. I think the AU Commissioner, when she made her speech at the conference, she spoke about, a young girl who, goes out and has to use firewood to make a charcoal stove every morning to boil water, and then you electrify that village, and then that young girl is now released to do other things. So it's about the human element about what we're doing. It's not just about making money. We can put together, I can tell you that we've looked at 7 interconnectors worth 1.2 billion. That's what would tell our stakeholders up there. But at the end of the day, that translates down to somebody's life has changed. So if you always remember what you're doing and why you're doing it and who allowed you to do it, it will help push you forward and keep you sane, because it's tough out there. And sometimes you want to give up,
Yes.
but it keeps you sane.
So would you safely say the future is female?
I would like to think so. Yes, I think in the team that we operate in and the people that we work around with a lot, it's a group of women, and I would say that it's because we have quite a strong weighting of women around that we get things done. Because I think women, is a never say never. You've got to get the job done. So yes, I think we should use more women when we do these sorts of things.
Say it.
The future is women. Yes.
No, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming
Thank
to
you.
Zani's studio.
Thank you very much.
That was Mrs. Chiboni Evans, the Chief Executive Officer of the South African Electro-Technical Export Council. On behalf of the entire Zani's production team, I am Alice Banda saying goodbye and keep watching Zani's TV.